Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Lucifer Season 2, Episodes 1 and 2. So, here's where we're starting to add in characters that are going to be regulars on this show, or characters that just kind of keep popping up in certain episodes. So, honestly, I just have to kind of feel like there were some interesting things going on in these episodes, but I can't feel that also, like, there's a lot of chucking going on, just kind of like, hey, here's this story, Chuck. Like, hey, here's this, Chuck. Like, here's some way to just eat up time, Chuck this. Like, season 2 is just kind of wacky compared to the first season, and they're just, like, I can tell that they're having fun, but, like, when also I complained thoroughly, deliciously about the whole, like, wanting to go into a much more supernatural direction, or like we now have like wacky things, like somebody gets killed uh with metal rods being put into their head like horns, and I'm like, really? Like, it's a wacky death. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as good as the first season. But even in the first season, there's a lot of crimes and stuff like that where I'm just like, follow the weird and wild bouncing ball all over the gosh darn place. Where it kind of feels like these episodes, they kind of simplify their cases a little bit. But again, I'm like, why are we adding so many people that I feel that probably won't have really anything to add to the show, really? No offense to these characters, because they're just doing the best with what they can do within a show. I like Amy, the girl who plays Ellie, who's the CSI investigator. I like Amy. She's a nice girl. I've seen her in Dexter, the girl who is to mostly be forced to just babysit Dexter's kid, and that's all that I really know her about. That's all I really know her about. That doesn't sound like an actual sentence. But so, like, we go on here and they just add her in as a, like, immediately, like, she used to be this religious girl, or the questioning of her religion, or something like that. Like, and this girl from off this episode becomes a regular, and I can't feel like this girl is well used in the show. Like, I don't think she was ever really well used. Um, and so, like, that's why I didn't really understand the addition. Uh, we're also to go on and see a guy named Lee, that is to pop up right in the beginning of season 2, episode 1, who is to be the robber. Lee, we're going to also consistently see him popping up through certain episodes. And so, like, that'll be fun to consistently see that guy, but to just be like, oh, yeah, it's you again. But, like, really, it's just the surprise of consistently seeing a person, and Bob's your uncle with that one. So, Charlotte. Charlotte is to be in episode 2. And so I gotta say, like, we have a person that is to be unaware of this world, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm just no, no. I don't want an oblivious person, really. I just don't. The sooner that they can incorporate her into the understanding of this world, the better. Um, like, really, like, for like how they eventually use this character in the later parts of things, I would much rather like that than the oblivious person that is to go on and not really know what's going on with things. I'm just, no, like, You have like the one thing that I never liked about a show is when you have a person that's like, oh, I have to relearn about Earth. Like we have like cavemen characters and like in the later seasons of Power Rangers. And so like basically I never like those kind of people that are to have to like be re-ingrained into the system of whatever. I'm like, because I don't like dumb characters unless there's like a specific reasoning for dumb characters that fits well, but like it never really does. So with these episodes, it feels like there's a lot of chucking going on, but it also feels like there's a lot of fun going on. Um, really continuing to enjoy them. Honestly, just adding in uh, just Tom singing in episodes. Because I know eventually somewhere down the road there's a whole entire episode where people are actually singing. Um, but I'm really enjoying what they're doing with Tom, like consistently having him sing in these episodes. Um, Even though it's starting to get to the point where, like, well, how many times can you go on and find a song that has the devil or something like that in it? But like, really, if you just go on and just pick a really good song, like it shouldn't matter whether it has some certain kind of tie. But again, like I'm still like wanting a kind of a more like we like had a hint of like Lucifer like showing his face and using his power and like stuff like that, but we really like I want more of that. I want like really like I want like some flexing going on. I really want some um time of which we're really seeing a much more like supernatural show than just another freaking detective show. And these episodes were kind of good on paper, but like the concept of them was interesting um and fun things, but still like there's a lot of this that's just like a lot of chucking going on. A lot of just like, hey, we gotta show where this character is now, where the progression of this character is now. Um, the story with the Midideal is really getting interesting within simply 2 episodes. So, like, because of course, if we have we're gonna have eventually a change between both Lucifer and both Amenadiel in a season, and so we're gonna see where that interestingly enough heads. So with that said, let's head into spoilers, or let's tee these episodes up. So in but like if I didn't mention it before, like season's wacky so far, it's just wacky. No. I don't like wacky. Um, unless like if it's like Deadpool wacky, like rated R, Deadpool wacky and whatever, then I will be on board with that. But wacky in a way of which that's just like I'll explain it when we get into these episodes. Just goofy and wacky. No. So let's go into it, teeing it up. So, episode 1 is to deal with a girl named Jillian who's to have horns or just metal rods being rammed into her head. And I'm like, okay, that's a little bit wacky for me. Um, but then we go on and we have to try to figure out, like, okay, it seems that this girl was to be tied to this celebrity who this celebrity is to have this drug addiction. And so we have to have weirdly this devil emoji drug thing to just continue to tie that Lucifer is to like everything has to do with the devil and like again like Lucifer is to make the joke about like well, yeah, I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna find a patent lawyer to just have these people all not use my name and whatever. Like, how like wouldn't a drug make sense if it was like more like heavenly, like something like that? Like, you can go on and like say that it's like the heavens clouds or drugs or something like that. Like, I don't know, you could say like these drugs are the power of God or something like that, but like I don't know. You could like I don't even know why like the drugs have to be like the devil or whatever. It could just be freaking drugs. It's like the devil emoji is to be like the drugs, and I'm like, really? Okay, whatever. Just give me some goofy, funny things that Lucifer just has to say in this episode. So I feel like that like whole like drug story was interesting on paper, but then we actually kind of have to like figure out who the culprit or villain is in this story, and then we also have to go on and have Lucifer trying to hunt down his mother, which is weird. And so Lucifer is just trying to figure out anybody who is to have died recently is to possibly be his mother or had died and then came back to life. So, and then in episode 2, we of course have somebody die and come back to life who ends up being Charlotte. And it seems that Charlotte was to be tied into some murder case. And so now, like, we have Lucifer who is to try to help out this case without it not being implemented that, like, Charlotte is the murderer of this whole thing. And to figure out who was to try to murder Charlotte and the one guy that she was with. And so there's a whole thing about that. And we also have, it seems that Trixie is to be uh, kind of up to no good within episode 2. And Amityville is starting to uh, be very feathered in these episodes, let's just say. So, with that said, let's just go into spoilers. Let's just go into that double five. It's about that time to just go into this thing that is to be called spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time to get spoil this episode. It's morphing time. I don't know why I did that. Like I don't know. Like I'm starting to feel like these episodes to me kind of feel like the goofiness of the like of certain Power Rangers episodes, like especially when we have like Charlotte who's this like oblivious person, and I'm just like, man, you could go on and have like the one Power Rangers season where we had like the caveman who ends up getting like unfrozen, and then he's like, oh well, I have to learn everything about Earth all over again because like what are these hot dogs? Like why? You would think like Charlotte, like maybe she should have just been like viewing the Earth from some like window somewhere in her cell, and like she could easily adapt. Uh, like wouldn't that be some horrible torture to just have somebody go on and be all caged up, but they're watching like everyone else live their lives, and like they have this kind of weird, goofy like television. Uh, like there's a lot of times when I would go on and be like, man, wouldn't that be like a real crazy way of torturing somebody by having them like the inability to like go anywhere, but then you have this TV that is to kind of showcase everyone else living their lives, and that like that's the only channel that you can watch. It's just everybody else just having a better life than you, and you're just stuck in a room, and you're just like, I can't go anywhere. Mah. Kind of with the way that things have happened for the last couple years. Um, Really, that is to be kind of like the one story that would kind of resonate probably with a lot of people. But anyways, I've farted things out for far too long. Let's go into spoilers. So, in the very beginning of season 2, episode 1, we have Lucifer that is to be teaming up with the Menadiel, the massive muscle Menadiel, is like they're doubling up together. They're Marvel teaming up, even though this is DC. So Brave and the Bold, braving and bolding it uh, together. Uh, so we have this guy who's Lee with a number of other guys going on and robbing a jewelry store, a jewelry auction, a, a looks like a jewelry store. And immediately in my brain, I'm like, that seems stupid. I'm like, so you have to go on and you have to steal jewelry to just turn around and try to make money off it somehow? Like, why aren't they just stealing money? Jewelry does not make sense because you would probably have to go on and probably have to realize that those jewels are like one of a kind, and more than likely anybody who's going to sell them, like, oh, like a red flag is to be presented right away. um I don't know, like, I don't really understand why people would steal jewelry or any kind of thing that they would have to like convert uh into why not just go and rob a bank? That seems more likely to do, but I'm sure probably at some point like, well, hey, like, there's only so many times then that they can just show people robbing a bank. They have to do something interesting in the show. You could rob paintings, that would be cool. I would Painting robbery would be pretty interesting. um Anyways, pushing on. So Lucifer and Amididiel are teaming up, and so Lucifer is to talk to this guy Lee and say like, well, yeah, like, you had, of course, Lee, you had nearly died, and so the guy is like, well, yeah, and but now I'm back, and so they're going on and talk, and both Amididiel and Lucifer are talking to this guy as if they're his mother, and this guy's like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. And so Amididiel is to stop time, and he's immediately realizing that this person is not their mother. And so Lucifer is to decide to go and take this guy's gun, put a tiara on him, and to take off all his clothes and to tie his shoes together. And so when Amididiel brings back time, all of a sudden we now have, of course, Lee, who falls over after he's like grabbing his junk. So Lee will be a consistent character that eventually will come back here. But this was the quick little burst of this character, of course, robbing this bank as if he's Joker from the Dark Knight. Somebody hit me, ma! Isn't that the only like quoted thing that anybody would go on and say for Batman the Dark Knight? Besides, like, let me tell you about these scars. Oh, yeah. Anyways, so you want to know about these scars I have on my face? Anyways, pushing on. So after that is to go on, we have, of course, Lucifer that is talking to Linda, and we have, of course, Lucifer who's talked about his mother and going on, because, of course, it seems the story is to go that Lucifer is to have had two parents that, of course, were in heaven, and they popped out a big batch of kids, creating the Big Bang, all this kind of jazz. And so, after everything was all right in the world, it seemed that God decided, it's like, well, hey, like, I'm going to go into the garage and tinker to make humanity, because I'm just, like, I just want to see, like, what kind of plays out there. And so it seems after that, it seemed that Lucifer had got banished from heaven, and like Charlotte or Lucifer's mom like wasn't really watching out for Lucifer or didn't really do anything when he was banished, and so it seems that when Lucifer was in hell, just kind of doing his torture work there, all of a sudden we had Charlotte that went to hell, and Lucifer didn't do anything to help his mother, didn't talk to her, didn't whatever. He just kind of left her to rot in hell, and because he's like, well, like if I was abandoned and like my mother didn't say a word to me, then I'm going to turn around and not do a thing for her and just kind of let her stew. So we go on and we have Linda who is telling Lucifer, it's like, well, like who do you think that you should blame for all this? Like who do you think that you should like curve the blame to? And Lucifer is like, well, God, or like my dad, or like so and so any other people. And Linda's like, and like, are you forgetting somebody? And Lucifer is like, well, you for like for not making me realize this sooner. It's like, so Linda is to, of course, like wanting just to be like, no, you imbecile, blame yourself. Like, blame yourself for not going on and just kind of saying that you could have approached, you could have gone on and kind of made things right, but instead you just decided to do nothing. And eventually Lucifer has to come to that realization. But Linda is to also tell Lucifer at some point, it's like, you know what, like, I don't really think that our like sessions are really helping you. Like, I just think that if anything, like you come in here and everything is to just be curved around and manipulated uh, to benefit you and have all these things be put into your favor, and like it's not really like helping you realize anything. And so Lucifer eventually comes to Linda and is to realize all the mistakes that he's made and all the wrongdoings that he's ever done. And so, like, that kind of mends fences. And so Lucifer is going on and still, like, going and seeing Linda and doing all these sessions. So, beyond that, Lucifer. Lucifer, of course, is to go with Chloe to go on this case. And so of course the case is that there's a girl named Jillian who is to have like metal horns coming out of her head, and so Lucifer is going on and is seeing this girl with being on a like a bizarre like merry-go-round, and there's horns in her head, and they find out that this girl is some stand-in for some actress who I believe is Amy. So they go on and they, of course, are to showcase Ella here as this new CSI character. And she, of course, is to mention about the metal parts of the head and just kind of mention like how they're kind of set up, so on and so forth. So we have Chloe, who is to mention that she is a sample of Lucifer's blood, and then she's gonna go on and test this blood. Lucifer's like, well, yeah, go on, test the blood. Then finally, like, you can like realize that like I'm finally the devil. That like this has to be unique blood, and so on and so forth. And like throughout the episode, we have both Chloe and Lucifer like consistently having it to where Lucifer's like, yeah, check that blood, check it, check it. And then I think Chloe's to have the one joke about the whole egg joke, um, where she goes on and she mentions about this joke where a guy walks in and is to mention that he is to find out that one of his relatives is a chicken, and the guy's like, well, like, he's crazy, right? And it's like, well, yeah, but I don't want to go on and condemn this guy because I still need the eggs. And it's like, ah ha ha, good joke. Because I guess the guy was ing out eggs, so like, hey, like, I guess keep the eggs, right? So we go on in this episode, and so Lucifer is to be attacked by some man in this club and in Lux. And so all of a sudden we have Maze that comes back. And so Lucifer's like, "Oh, you finally came back, hey Maze? You and your ponytail now, as you've gone and been more ponytail in this season for reasons." Um, and so we have them like duct tape this guy up, and we of course have this guy who's Squeal. I think his name is Otis. Um, and eventually, he of course is to talk about a guy named Bobby B, being this new drug guy, and so we also had Lucifer that went to Amy's dressing room, or just kind of room that she, of course, is to be kind of prepared to get on set with. And it seems that Amy is to immediately throw herself at Lucifer, and Lucifer is to possibly think that Amy is to actually be his mother. And so, because Lucifer just thinks everyone is his mother for some goofy reason within these episodes. So, Lucifer is to, like, immediately think that Amy is Lucifer's mother, and so Amy's throwing herself at Lucifer, and then Lucifer's like, "Oh my God, this must be the horriblest version of torture you could give me. Oh no, like I am sickened by this," and so on and so forth. No, and so all of a sudden Chloe comes into the room, and Lucifer is telling Chloe, it's like, well, this is the one time where it's definitely not what it looks like. And so Amy all of a sudden is to talk about that, of course, she was have this addiction to drugs, and like this girl who's working on the show. And so Amy is to go on and give Chloe these drugs, and like, oh, take them all. And I'm like, okay, that's a goofy kind of line delivery, but okay, whichever. Um, and so they go on and immediately see that the drug bag is to have a devil emoji on it, and Lucifer is like, well, I'm gonna find a patent clerk right now, or I'm gonna find a like a God, what is it? Um, Not a patent guy, but like he's gonna go on and he's gonna like find out how he can get rid of every single like devil visual that could be out there, um, and so forth. He's gonna go and get a lawyer and lawyer up. So we have, of course, Chloe, who is to find, of course, this uh, drug dealer, because of course they are to both go, both Lucifer and uh, and both Chloe, they go on to find a phone number, or they find some cell that is to go on and find that the phone number is coming from this location, which is to be this meeting where a lot of people are meeting for this drug addiction. So Lucifer goes on, and he is to go into this meeting, this narco or this NA meeting or something like that. So Lucifer is coming in here, and he is to go on and say like, well, hey, like, I love all kinds of drugs, all of them, yeah. And Lucifer's like, and I have lots and lots of money too, yeah. Like, I like spend them on drugs, and everyone's like, yeah, yeah, all right. So Lucifer goes on and like he's like trying to entice this drug dealer, and so after this whole meeting is over, and after Lucifer was to talk about his low moment, and where all the sudden Lucifer is to realize like, well, yeah, I guess my low moment was the point when like my like mother abandoned me, and so I abandoned her. And so then Lucifer after this talk was to realize that like, yeah, like that he needed to go back to Linda and apologize to her. So after Lucifer and Chloe were done with this meeting, and we have a guy named Erwin Veach or Veach who comes into the fray here, saying like, "Hey guys, I got drugs." Immediately, we have Chloe who is to grab this guy and is to uh, like interrogate him or question him, and so Chloe is to show the picture of this girl who had died, and Irving just starts hurling into this garbage can. And so Irving is to give up the name of this kind of Bobby B guy. And so now it seems that both Chloe and both Lucifer are to both have this name. And they're like, well, like, what can we really do with it? Like, who could possibly have this name? So we also find out that it seems that Chloe is to realize that Dan had gotten demoted because I guess weirdly, instead of him getting like arrested and sent to jail forever, instead he just got like suspended. And like really Dan is to mention to Chloe, it's like, well, like there isn't much that they could have really pinned me on. And so really Dan is to say that he had gotten demoted and that all he's to really do is whatever Chloe wants him to do. And that's really just to kind of like talk to suspects or something like that. So Chloe's kind of giving Dan orders, and Dan's like, I love it when you give me orders. It's getting me kind of hot. And like Dan's like, oh, like bad habits. So I think that happens. I think he says that in like episode 2, but still, like, we're kind of playing around that possibly like Dan maybe getting back into Chloe's good graces or something like that. But just like whatever with these characters. So within these episodes, and here's where it gets really funny, wacky but funny. So Lucifer is to go through these pictures of friends of Jillian, and we right away have Lucifer who is to see this certain photo that has the words Robert on it, and Roberta, and so we of course had it after like they found Jillian dead. They go to Roberta because Roberta is kind of like holding this girl's like place, and so they thumb through this girl's place, and Roberta is to mention how like it's so bad that Jillian had met with Amy because Amy being this drug addict. Well, come to find out, Roberta or Bobby B was to be this drug dealer, and so Jillian was trying to help Amy sober up and to just kind of kick the habit of being on drugs. And Amy was Roberta's like number one like bestseller, and so like that's the reason why Roberta was like, dude, we gotta kill like Jillian off, because like she's getting the way of my bestseller, and hopefully we can get her addicted again. So Lucifer is to make his way to Roberta's place, and so all of a sudden, we of course immediately have Lucifer. As soon as Roberta opens the door, he's like, "Oh, hello, murderer!" And so Lucifer is to go in there and is to confront Roberta about being this murderer. I'm like, why isn't Lucifer with Chloe? But I guess like Lucifer wanted to go on his own because funny moments. So Chloe is to also be shortly but surely behind Lucifer. And so now all of a sudden we have Lucifer being attacked by Roberta with this like metal like poker rod that of course you would normally have with like fireplaces, which I'm like, okay, this seems like a random item. So all of a sudden like Roberta is starting to like cluck and smack and freaking like beat up Lucifer with this fire poker, and we have Lucifer that's like, is this a supernatural fire poker? Because he's so amazed that this girl is just beating the living crap out of him. And so, like, this is really fun. And we have Lucifer that's, like, choking, and he's just like, ah! Like, please don't tell anybody I died this way. So, all of a sudden, Chloe's, like, knocking on the door, and she's like, I think I hear some people in here. Like, I'm not going to leave until somebody comes to this door. And so Chloe is to hear like two people talking, and so Chloe is trying to find an entrance into this place. And so Lucifer and Roberta are fighting, and it's like, we're trying to figure all this out. And so all of a sudden Chloe's to come from behind Roberta and is to taser her, and Lucifer is to grab the taser from of course Chloe, and is to zap her one more time. So Roberta is to get arrested and to be put away here, and so they kind of wrap up the whole story for most of episode 1. So we're going on and realizing that that Amenadiel is to want to stop, of course, Chloe from figuring out Lucifer. And it's kind of funny because Amenadiel is to try and tell Chloe the truth in these episodes, and she's really not buying it. And so we also find out that Amenadiel is going to lose his wings. They're eventually, like, all the feathers are going to fall off, and at some point we're going to have, like, kind of just Amenadiel just kind of lose his grace here, his angel grace. And so eventually where we see one guy who starts to fall, we see another person rise, let's just say. Rise to the occasion. So we'll kind of see how that all plays out somewhere down the road. But anyways, so but we get this like really cool visual of Amenadiel's like wings starting to just kind of fade away towards, I think, the end of episode 2. So like that was really cool. I really liked that visual in this this show. So yeah, so like I'm trying to think if there's anything left for me to talk about for episode 1, and I don't really think that there is. Chloe and Lucifer are to talk about that whole egg joke thing, and so Chloe is to consistently want like Lucifer to be at her side, because even though Amenadiel is to basically say that Lucifer's crazy and this is all in his head, because Amenadiel is to show Chloe, it's like, well, hey, like, basically how Lucifer can just dodge bullets it's because he has a bulletproof vest, and he has all these, like, these blood pacts. And we have Chloe, it's like, well, how is it that he's gone on and be able to persuade all these people? And Amenadiel is like, well, like he is to just be uh like able to like perfectly like hypnotize people. And so like Amenadiel really justifies all of this, and it seems like a rational reasoning. But Chloe just doesn't buy it. Like I think it's just coming from Amenadiel. Like we just have Chloe that's like, you know what, there's something just unusual about Lucifer, and she just wants to completely figure it out. And every time we even have Lucifer telling her, like, I am the devil. Like we're going on and we still have Chloe's like, I'm not buying that either. So because like Mididiel did not help Chloe understand how exactly Lucifer has changed his like face at certain times. Like how did he explain that? He doesn't say anything, because we've had at some points in time where Lucifer has changed his eye color to red. We've seen at some points where Lucifer has changed his head from the normal Tom Ellis face to being this kind of charred looking face. And we have at some points where Chloe has seen that, and one way or the other, and like a Amenadiel didn't explain that. So so going on into the next episode. So into the next episode, we of course have the story about Charlotte. So really in the beginning of episode 2, we just kind of focus on a bunch of people who had died and are to be brought back by Charlotte to immediately just get quickly killed. And so we're transitioning through random person. We have one guy who is to kind of get up after being a guy that's going to have a heart attack. He ends up getting up and ends up getting immediately get hit by this bus, saying like, well, hey, I got to go and find Lucifer. So we have Charlotte that goes to person to person to person. Every person ends up saying like, oh, I got to go and find Lucifer. And then they end up immediately, shortly thereafter, getting killed. Like one guy is to kind of wake up of like, I got to find Lucifer. And a guy like in this gang war is to shoot this guy and kill him. So we have Charlotte who is to wake up in this bed, and she has this kind of screwdriver like rammed into her neck. And so Charlotte is to kind of pull this out, and then she's like, like this is kind of weird. So, and then her wound heals. So Charlotte is to go on in her place to find a dead body there. And so instead of going on and cleaning up her injury and making her way to Lucifer, like no, like she cleans up nothing of herself and then is to go on and try to find where Lucifer is, and is to say like, hey, I need your help. Like this was to happen while I was to be dead, so on and so forth. So, or while I was to be awakened and whatever. So we oddly have it where like Lucifer is to be preparing for his mother's wrath, and like really like Lucifer's mom is to not be like that at all. She's just like, well, hey, like I don't think you understand, like I've had like some time to marinate on like on my absence and so on and so forth, and like I think now like I just want to go back home, like I just want to go like back to the way things were. And so, because Lucifer is just kind of Lucifer is just kind of expecting his mother to just like have like a lot of carnage in her wake and stuff like that. And of course, we have in this episode that Chloe is to say that hey, like they have a case, because at first all that Chloe used to really have as far as a case is a case that Trixie has gone on and destroyed her doll so that way she can go on and get a brand new one. And Lucifer is to find out about this case, and he kind of walks in, and we had Chloe at one point who was kind of like closing her eye and stuff like that to look like the doll, and Lucifer is to kind of point that out. So Lucifer is asking Chloe about like, well, what the heck is going on, and so Chloe's to mention that Trixie is to want this new, like, brand new doll, and so she figures the way that she can go and get that is really by destroying her old one. And Trixie, I guess, is to want a $200 doll. I'm like, wait a minute, like a doll is $200? Really? Man, that seems like a very. I can understand if it was like a PlayStation console or something like. I can understand it was like a gaming console or whatever, but like a $200 doll, really? Like I would say, like at most, it would probably be like 40 to $60, but like $200 doll. What crack pipe are they smoking to just like be like putting up a $200 doll and someone buy it? Like I can understand if it's like an antique doll, maybe like that's what they're going with now. Is like, oh no, like everybody's buying these very retro looking dolls, but they're really expensive. Like I could see that maybe like a Cabbage Patch doll that was done during a certain time. I don't know. I'm going too far into this, but still, $200. Does anybody have a $200 doll that they just why? Uh, Again, too far I have gone now. But anyways, so we have this case, of course. We're trying to figure out who was to murder Charlotte and this other Goomba in her place. We so we go on into this story. I was reading a tweet. No, I was reading some text. So going on, we have the guys go in and they go through Chloe's place because it seemed that Charlotte was to, or Chloe's place. They go through Charlotte's place. My bad. Because what happened is Charlotte was to go back to the scene of the crime and was to show Lucifer about this dead guy in this room. And so Lucifer is to go and sneak Charlotte out, and it seems that Charlotte is now wearing Maze's clothes. And I'm like, dang, yeah, like I've seen like some kind of clothes like that Maze had probably worn at some point. But yeah, like very revealing. Um, plus, anyways, but pushing on. So speaking of revealing, because at one point Charlotte is just to go on and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna be like topless basically in front of the streets, and so Lucifer is to chuck this blazer on of course Charlotte, and so now Charlotte is to be like with a blazer for the rest of this episode. So we go on. Or no, wait, well, like Charlotte eventually is to get some other kind of clothes, but still, it is what it is with this episode. So we have to kind of figure out who possibly is to be the killer in this episode, and they don't really go through any like real hoops to jump through either. So we go on here, and at first we have this business that they're questioning, and first they're questioning this guy named Ben Wheeler, and it seems that Ben Wheeler wanted nothing to do with Charlotte's death. If anything, he wanted to go on and like be in love with Charlotte. And so like this guy doesn't really have any motives to want to kill this woman. So at some point we have this guy that's tied to Charlotte who's called Victor Perez. And so Lucifer is to go on to this like suntan bathing company, store, place, and is to meet with Victor and is to like push him into this bed and like just kind of like mention how like this guy was to go on and try and kill his mother and stuff like that. So eventually this guy gets caught with a wall full of cocaine because it seems that that is the theme of this episode. Because of course uh, we had Charlotte who was to go on and talk to a guy named Elliot, and Elliot was to lead them uh, to, of course, this kind of very broken down man who was to have these Crocs for shoes and was to also go on and have this like awful looking wardrobe with Dave Matthews Band and all this kind of stuff. And so they open up one of these kind of like things that has like these like sealed in kind of zipper kind of things to kind of hold in certain kind of clothes. And when they open this up, they realize that there's a bunch of cocaine in there, which leads to, of course, Victor, which kind of like that's what kind of seals in the freshness of this whole ordeal. So eventually we go on and we put the pieces together and we try to figure out who the killer is. And really, it just kind of comes down to a guy named Liam Pickering. And so Liam, I guess, was jealous that some other guy was to get a promotion over him. And so he, of course, was to go on and was to find Charlotte via some grocery store because she was using this corporate card to just buy all these things. And so Charlotte is asking Maze like about this credit card because Charlotte was to be kept watched by Maze uh, until Charlotte was to go and headbutt Maze in the head. After, of course, having Maze like presenting all these like torture things and was going on and talking to Charlotte about all that went down and so on and so forth. So we so blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to think of all the stuff. So we had Maze that kind of comes back in the fold here, and so we have some time where Maze is to talk to Amityville and like talk about their lovemaking sesh and really to have Amityville kind of happy that Maze is back and like really that's to be the whole like thing of that. Trying to think if there's anything that I left out. Charlotte, of course, Chloe is to ask, of course, Ella about her religious beliefs at some point, because Lucifer is to notice the cross on Ella's necklace, and so then Charlotte is to also ask about her religious beliefs, because Charlotte is to ask, of course, about this blood sample that she wants Ella to run. And Ella, of course, to mention how like it seems that her mother more believes in God than she does, and so on and so forth, kind of like her religious beliefs in this episode. We also have Linda who's confronting Amityville, and Linda is to ask, like, oh, like, are you already moving on from being a therapist? Are you going to go and be a lawyer or an astronaut or something else now? And Amityville's like, well, you know what, Linda? Like, I'm sorry for what I did to you, but, like, But hey, like, it was something that I needed to do. And so, like, this, that kind of brings back to like Medidiel talking to Chloe about Lucifer and him. How Chloe's like, well, like, how is it exactly that you're both brothers? And Medidiel's like, well, you've never heard of adoption, all this kind of stuff. Um, I feel like I'm going to keep coming back to that because that's probably the more interesting part of this episode. So, but yeah, so we have Liam Pickering, who is to be the killer of this episode. And so we have Charlotte that's in this parking lot with all this cheese because she was to go on and see some commercial about mac and cheese. And so Liam is to find her and is to try to attack her. And Lucifer is to find Charlotte, and so he intervenes. But then Lucifer is to stab into Charlotte and just say, like, hey, like, this isn't re-injury, and you're gonna play that up. So Chloe, of course, is to take down Liam and arrest him, and so now, like, they're playing off as, like, of course, Charlotte was the victim and she was trying to run away. So to just kind of save this girl's hide. So with that said, I think that hopefully covers most of these episodes. I'm sure there's a kind of a thing here or there that I probably did forget about. There's a lot of stuff really just going on with these episodes. So I always kind of am terrified that I forgot about something. Besides Mididiel and his losing of his wings, as he is to kind of like open up his wings to realize there's a lot of feathers falling and so on and so forth. Other than that, we had Lucifer and Charlotte having this talk where Charlotte was to go on and try to bring Lucifer mac and cheese, and Lucifer was like, "Oh, that's what all that cheese was for," and Charlotte is trying to go on and convince Lucifer that, like, there is no wrath here. Like, Charlotte is really on Lucifer's side, and if anything, she just wants to go back home to where, like, things were, or back to the way things were with everything. And like, Charlotte just needed that kind of time to just think things over, yada yada yada. Other than that, yeah, I think everything else is just kind of everything else I think is just kind of, like, Lucifer was to go on and buy that doll for Trixie, and I guess it was delivered at the precinct with, of course, Chloe's name being on the address. So Chloe is to open up this doll box, and Lucifer's like, "What? Like, you can just say that that you bought this for her," and like, there also was some, like, chocolate treat in there, and so Chloe could not go on and accept this doll, and so we just see Chloe, who's repackaging this up, I guess, going to return it. And Lucifer's like, well, I get to keep the chocolate treat then. Yeah. So, because Lucifer is to mention that the chocolate treat is something that, of course, like, Trixie would love anyways. And so, like, that would be a bonus for her. So, but yeah, like, Chloe doesn't go on and do anything with the doll. And so Lucifer just kind of looks for the consolation prize of things. So, so really within this episode, I think I've covered most of my bases. Yeah, like, there was stuff about this that was kind of a lot more vague than a lot of other reviews, but like, when really looking at it, try to just get the meat and the potatoes down of most of this episode. Hopefully, we'll go on, and even though it seems that these episodes were pretty simple and they were straightforward, There was some stuff that I was just kind of like, man, like there was so much dialogue here that I was kind of like, Um, but anyways, let me know in the comments below how you felt about these Lucifer episodes, because I'm going to Lucifer myself out of here. So I'm going to say goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.